Transitioning back here to Parliament Hill earlier today, Muslim imams appeared before a Senate committee to discuss the threat of terrorism and how to best fight back against radicalization. Will the government's new bill help Muslim communities or not? For more on that, we're joined by Ihsaan Gardee. He is the Executive Director of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, as well as Imam Sikandar Hashmi. First of all, I'd like to begin by asking you gentlemen what your reaction is to this government bill. I'll start with you, Imam.
Well, I think it's totally understandable that there is a lot of concern and quite a bit of fear as well amongst Canadians. And I think many Muslims, including Muslim leaders, are also concerned. So we understand that the Prime Minister feels the need to do something about the problem. But I'm not sure if this bill really takes the right approach.
What do you think is missing from it, or perhaps included that shouldn't be?
Well, I think first of all, if you talk about radical ideology, I think that's something that can be dealt with only so much through laws. And there really needs to be an effort, I think, to engage members of the community, people within the community who can actually work on the struggle and the battle of ideas that it's really about. Secondly, with the legislation that has been proposed, I think it's really, really important to have proper oversight to make sure that these powers are not abused. And I must point out that it's not just, I'm not just saying that because I'm a Muslim and I'm concerned about myself and my community. This can really be used against anyone, because once these books are on the laws, these laws are on the books, they're going to be there for a long time. So I think all Canadians should be concerned about that, making sure that the laws that are proposed are balanced, and that there's proper oversight in making sure that we don't restrict freedom of belief, freedom of speech, while at the same time making sure that we tackle the problem of radicalization in the best way possible.
Ihsaan, your group objected to the way that the government characterized some of this when Stephen Harper spoke on Friday. What is it that he said that bothered you, and why?
Well, just the whole way that the law was introduced, not being introduced into Parliament, it spoke to a kind of an electioneering kind of environment. It was introduced in front of a crowd of people clapping, and without the being introduced into Parliament first, where it should have been, and debated seriously. We have a number of concerns about the way that the law was introduced, in addition to the format. The language that the Prime Minister used, using terminology like jihadism, to our count at least 15 times. And then also in the questions and answer section, following his speech, he was asked about the idea of what this bill would be addressed towards.
We have a clip of it, so I just want to play it so our viewers can have a listen to what you're talking about.
The problem is government has a very close ally, and that ally is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a part of G20. Saudi Arabia is a very close ally of United States and Canada. We have very good relationship, but Saudi Arabia is the breeding ground of that ideology. That creates a terrorist.
It doesn't matter what the age of a person is, or whether they're in their basement, or whether they're in a mosque or somewhere else. When you are engaged in activities that explicitly promote or advocate terrorism, that is a serious criminal offense.
So when you were listening to these comments, that the jihadi bothered you, and I ask this because a lot of Canadians will say, well, what is it about those terms that bothered you? I know also your group is not happy that the Prime Minister referred to this taking place, some of this radicalization inside of mosques.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's not just our organization that has spoken out about this in terms of terminology and the importance of our elected officials and others speaking about these issues in terms that are accurate and contextualized as well. The RCMP produced a report in 2009 entitled Words Make Worlds, in which they made the point clearly that conflating Islam and Muslims with terrorism is problematic on a number of levels. One, it reinforces myths and stereotypes about Muslims and Islam in general, and two, it actually feeds into the narrative of those people putting out these propaganda about radicalization towards extremist violence, and that sets up this idea of a clash of civilizations. They point to it and say, see, the West is at war with Islam. So it becomes this vicious cycle which we have to actually break. Our our concern with the Prime Minister's comments also include the fact that he was, as you said, linking it to mosques, when we know, for example, that mosques and other Muslim organizations are at the forefront of this fight against radicalization towards extremist violence. And what that does is it sort of broad brush strokes in the minds of average everyday Canadians that this must be what's happening. If it's our Prime Minister saying it must be happening, and without providing any substantiating evidence or any qualification, it's extremely problematic, and it's something we're very concerned about, and which is why we're asking the Prime Minister for an apology and a clarification.
Well, when we look at where radicalization is happening, right after 9/11, there was a lot of concern about the mosques, and we heard that the one imam whose clip we played say that he is concerned about what some mosques are preaching, that he said he had been inside some mosques where they had been preaching hateful things, and he was disturbed because he said, this is not Islam, this is not what my religion preaches, and he was deeply concerned by that. But many of the young men who we've seen who have at least gone overseas or who have engaged or attempted to engage in acts here at home, when you speak to the mosques, they say they came here but not very often, they didn't really hang out. It seems like a significant amount of this is now taking place online, self-radicalization as it were. How does your community fight back against that? If these are young people who are coming into the mosque once or twice, then realizing you're not going to endorse their views and leaving?
I think it is very challenging, and I think the only thing that we can do is try to play a positive role as much as possible. We will continue to speak out very loudly, very clearly against violent radicalization, against all forms of terrorism, and say that they're totally unacceptable. I mean, this message has been being delivered for almost over a decade now, collectively, and has been done individually as well. We're holding sessions and programs, trying to engage the youth, bring them into the mosque, take them away from the basements or wherever they are, where they're online and at risk. We're trying to bring them inside so that they can, we have facilities for them where they can enjoy themselves. We can build connections with them, and then when they do have questions and they're in search of guidance, then they know who to speak to, and I think that's extremely important.
We just have a few seconds left, but I want to ask each of you quickly, what is the number one thing that the government could do that would help the situation?
Talk to us. I think talk to community leaders, talk to people at the forefront of the struggle between violent radicalization, extremism, and people who want to live and coexist together, and that's what we're all about. We've been giving messages about following all laws, just like all Canadians. Be kind to your neighbor, be law-abiding citizens, and really let's get involved at all levels, and we can really do this together.
Ihsaan, just a few seconds.
I'd agree with Imam Sikandar's idea that more engagement is required, but I would also say oversight. Now, I respectfully disagree with your earlier guest, Mr. Atke, that CERC has sufficient powers. The number of, perhaps that was the case when he was with CERC, but we've heard from others that CERC is under-resourced, underfunded, and we've got on the tables here recommendations from the Aurora Inquiry Report, which was tabled 10 years ago, about what is needed to make our security agents and agencies more effective, both in terms of ensuring that the powers that they have are not being transgressed, but also that there's somebody there to report back and to be able to hold them to account. And if mistakes are made, there's robust redress mechanisms in place to fix those issues.
Certainly something we'll be keeping an eye on. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you.